What's up, butterfly people? We are back with a new request from the YouTube comments asking, how do we make butterflies? Well, that's a great question. We made a tutorial on this a long time ago, and we're back to do it again in much richer detail with some new methods and some maybe even easier and harder methods. So let's get right on into it. Here we are back, and look at this blue butterfly. I built this last night, took me about an hour. Absolutely gorgeous. I did follow like a little picture I found online and just kind of made it similar aesthetically. You'll notice there's like 1, 2, 3, or 4 text objects in each of these wings. It's definitely a high capacity costing butterfly, but if butterfly is the thing that's going to make your world stand out, this one is fantastic. The goal today is to make these wings flap. We're going to start by doing a hand animated recording just to show you how you could do this without any scripting. And we're also going to add a keyframe motion script so that the butterfly can move to all the different points you want it to move to. First things first, I'm going to go show you this, which is grouped together. So I'll quickly ungroup it. Opening up the properties panel for one of these, you can see that we're using the alpha technique and then using a pound AA for the opacity. And then I've painted it the color blue, and we're just seeing a comma that's been stretched out. Now, unfortunately, this gives a massive bounding box, which would have made the making this butterfly animate really difficult, which is the reason I didn't go with it. Whereas you can see this bounding box, it's pretty big, but it's not super big. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate a couple copies of this butterfly. So we have the original, we'll have the one that we hand animate, we'll have the one that we script animate, and then we're going to have this one, which is the one that we're going to tear apart real quick. And so I want to show you some of the techniques being used in here that I think are super cool. So if we ungroup this, you can see we've got the center, then we've got the sides, and we can actually group these together. But what I wanted to do first and foremost was find the edge of this one and then place a cube before we group them. And we're going to break this apart anyway before we do that. But you can see I've just put a little circle on top of this. So we'll actually ungroup this. You can see the face is actually oops. Yeah, I guess we can pull that out, delete. So you can see we've actually got a tube, like a little inner tube, a half tube, and I believe this is A or B. But the A, B, and C of these toruses are really, really good, and you can find them in your asset library under the shapes section, and so they're really good. You might have to search for them. I noticed in one of my other live streams, you might have seen that we were having trouble finding them all because there was only 11 lines, although it looks like there's 12, so there's 2 missing on this load. But for some reason, you can't always see all of them there. You just have to search for the ones that you can't see, so that's interesting. You'll also note that here, these are spheres rather than being half spheres. Those are more efficient shapes, so it's important to use spheres rather than half spheres. I know it's tempting for all of these little half sphere type shapes, but definitely use the spheres as they are more efficient. You'll see up here that we can have the sphere right here at the 48 mark. And if we go to the right, the half sphere is at the 29, which means you can only have 29 per 1%, whereas you can have 48 of these. So that's a significant increase of 11 per 1% geometric complexity. Also, you'll notice that these torus A, B, and C I was talking about are all super efficient, being in the green zone or at 50 per 1%, which is the best of the best. So definitely encourage you to use those. And when building a complex geometric butterfly like this, you definitely want to take all of that into consideration. So we're going to go start by ungrouping this one, and you can see that we've got few different pieces here. So there's it's a whole piece. We'll just go and group it again. And there we go. So I think it was skewed prior, which is why it was grouped. So there's a little bit of skewing in here, which is why this is a little bit off, but that's okay. This one is super cool. This is actually skewed as well. So if I open this up, or actually, let me quickly show you that if I stretch this down, you can see it's actually just a quarter torus. And so if we ungroup this, it should go back to, do we need to do it again? Oh, wait, what is this? Oh, I see. So it was a stretched quarter torus that was then skewed along this axis. So basically, if you pull out a cube like this and place it at this angle, you can select it, select this, and then flatten these together. You can then group them together, open up the properties panel, zoom in, delete the cube, and you are left with what could be used for an antenna or any of these sort of curvy lines that isn't necessarily a hard angle. And then up in here, we have half torus, which are used to make these sort of butterfly insets. And then we've got the cylinders being used here. And you'll notice for the most part, we're using only shapes that can be found in the green section. But the cylinder is the one I'm talking about right now is also in here. And I use that rather than a cube because it looks rounded. So it's going to look a little bit nicer without costing any more geometric. And then what you'll notice that I've done here is I've actually made this all non-collidable. So if we zoom in, you can see that these are all non-collidable. And what that's going to do is keep this from having a ton of interaction with the physics engine. And if we did want it to be collidable, we could add, say, a collider right here, or a collider just like a cube collider rather than having all of these meshes. And that would be super fine as well. Now, what we're going to look at next is this text object to show you that this is using the mark equals #0050FFAA. So this is your red, green, blue, and then your alpha. And then there's an invisible tab here. You can't see it, but that is a tab insert. So if you like press the tab key, that's what makes it look like that. And then we stretch it out and get it exactly where we need it. And we get these kind of cool looks. So anyway, there is the butterfly. So now you know how it was made. Hopefully that helps you if you are making your own butterfly or any other creatures for that matter. Now we're going to go ahead and get started with the hand animation. So we're going to try and keep this as simple as possible just to show how it would be done. We're going to start by ungrouping just for a little bit. We're then going to group these two together, but we need to make sure that the far edge, which looks to be this one, is on this side. So what we'll do is pull out a cube. We'll then make this cube invisible and non-collidable. And then this will just be a reference point that we're going to use. And you'll notice that there is this guy here, which is parallel to ours. And then there we go. So this kind of fills up this left half, but we want to make sure that it is also centered. And so we want to make sure it's on the top and the bottom. So we're also checking that which one of these is the lowest, and it's the one on the back. So we're going to select this and then stretch and snap it to the height of this one, if I can find it. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. So now that is at the far reaches. You can see it's actually making it pretty hard to select, but fortunately, these two are a little bit off. So I can select this, and then we're going to select these two and group it together. And what we should be able to do now is flap the wings of this butterfly. There we go. So now we've got the potential to flap the wings. That's looking gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and click undo. Now that we've made one of these, I think we can make, I'm not sure, so we might hit undo if this doesn't work, but we're going to give it a try at least. Let's see if I go inside. So what I did there is I went into this grouping so that I could select the item in the group without selecting the outside. And then what we're going to do is grab this duplicate, rotate 180 degrees, so turning snapping on. And does that look good? That looks really great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so now that we've got these two, we just need to animate them, but we need to animate them in sync. So we're actually going to undo, now that we know that it'll work, open up the properties panel of this and go to animated. So we select animated from the motion. Then we're going to hit record, but we're going to first turn off snapping so that it doesn't have a choppy recording. And then we are ready to grab this guy here. So we're going to hit record. And then what we'll do is go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, as many times as you want. I think you get up to like 30 seconds in this recording. And so the longer you do this, the less likely it is to have a choppy motion. And so I'm going to stop now and hit the stop button. And then what we want to do is put this on continuous. No, we're going to do this on back and forth. So the nice thing about back and forth is when it gets to the end, it just reverses. And with a butterfly wing flap, it should be totally okay to do that. We're going to change the speed down to 0.3, which by slowing it down will make it look a little bit smoother. We'll go ahead and click play on start, which is going to start it flapping already. So you can kind of see the butterfly's wings are flapping, which is nice. It's not terrible. We're going to have to stop the world. So going to our build menu script tab, hit the stop button, and that's going to allow us to duplicate this with all of those attributes we just set up so that these flap in sync. Fingers crossed. I'm not actually sure this will work because of that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking might happen. Oh, it's so close. But what we're seeing happen in here is they're basically counter because it was rotated 180. Ah, so close. There's a way to make this work. I'm trying to think what it would be. I'm not sure the exact right method to make this work, but what I will tell you is this is obviously not working, and that's okay. So, like, you might even be okay with this. So we're gonna roll with this for now. even though it's not perfect. It kind of looks cool. If we're being honest, it's kind of cool. So we're going to select all of this. Now that we selected all three pieces, we can put our hand inside and thumbstick to the left to group them together. And now we have a grouped butterfly. So let's say you wanted this butterfly to fly around in a circle. So you could, just for quick reference, you could go click animated, and we're going to turn off snapping again, and then hit record, and then grab your butterfly and fly it around like this and give it some sort of like motion. And then in the first butterfly tutorial, you'll remember that what we did was we hid it underneath the world, so that way you wouldn't see it. So then we'd hit stop. And so we would have started and stopped underneath the world, and then we're going to hit loop continuously because it has to always be moving forward. The speed is going to go down to 0.2, which will make it look a little smoother. We're going to hit play on start, and we should see, once we hit the play on the world, that it's now going to start flying. So we'll come in as a player and see what this looks like. Honestly, not bad. So like, like considering how quickly we were able to put that together, that's not terrible. And you could record this a few times until you got the motion you wanted. It's weird because it almost feels like the wings, because they're in sync, are not flapping because they're just rotating counter to each other, which is interesting. And so that's definitely something that might work well for a dragon, perhaps. So like if you're designing a different flying creature, having the wings kind of sticking out like that, or a bird even. But for a butterfly, we really need that flap. And so what I think we're going to need to do is make sure they're out of sync. So let's go ahead and stop. And I think there was just a little bit of out of syncness when we started it the first time. But what we're going to do to make sure it's out of sync is zoom in here, open up the properties of one of these, and then under the speed, adjust this down to 0.25, which should quickly put it out of sync. And then we'll zoom out by clicking this button at the top of the menu. And now we're going to go ahead and hit play and see what that looks like. So now we should get a little bit more of a flapping motion. Yeah, there it goes. So, oh yeah, and sometimes they'll be in sync now, which looks really good. So there we go. Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, sometimes they'll be in sync, sometimes they won't. Either way, that butterfly is fantastic. And you might even argue that because we hand recorded it, it looks a little bit more organic too, which is kind of cool. So it doesn't necessarily have what we're going to see in the scripted one, which is a little bit more scripted motion. So this might be the method for you. This is really cool. I like this a lot. But now we're going to go and record with our butterfly one, a scripted one, which is a little bit more difficult. Oh, look at it doing a little like three and like a, that was crazy. Now, the only problem with that is, remember, we didn't start it off scene, so it just pops up right there when it's done. So you got to make sure you start it somewhere off scene, and then it comes into the scene, and then it flies around, and then it goes again off scene. So it kind of has that nice perfect loop when you use continuous. But otherwise, very impressed with this butterfly. And we're going to go start the scripting. So to start this off, we need to start by animating the wings. And it's worth noting that animations play many times better in publish mode. So if for some reason your animation doesn't look good, or if ours doesn't look good, we have to publish the world to be able to see it. Unfortunately, I'm not the creator of this world, so we actually won't be able to publish it. But it should be close enough that I think we're going to be okay. But just want to give you that fair warning if you're working in your world. So we're going to start by animating the wings. So I'm creating a script block just for the wings. And so when world is started, we need to create a loop that is the flapping motion. So we're going to go down to when event is received, and we're also going to grab send event with delay, which we're going to drag and drop into here. We'll go and drop a send event to object on world start, so this starts immediately. And now we need to call this event loop. Having typed in the name loop, we can click confirm, and what we'll see is we can now drop down and select loop from the drop down for these other two. Now, when world is started, we send loop to self. When loop is received, we continuously loop every 1 second. So every 1 second, this event will happen, meaning we can create some motion that's going to happen repeatedly. Now, to make sure it can flap up and down, we're going to use a Boolean variable. A Boolean is a true or false value that can be used to flip things back and forth. By naming our Boolean go up, this is kind of like saying, if it's true, let's push the wings up. If it's not true, we'll push the wings down. So it kind of defines a little bit better what it is. And so we're going to go ahead and leave this as false because it doesn't really matter so much. We're going to scroll to the top of our events, grabbing an if. We're also going to grab an else, and then we're going to put that Boolean into the if. And so now it says if go up, we'll do something, else we'll do something else. And then what we want to do is change this value. So we set the go up. So going to our values tab, we can grab set to. And going to the operators tab, we can grab the not operator, putting this into the right side of this set too. And what are we setting? Well, we're setting go up. So we'll grab go up. Going upwards, we can then thumbstick to the right to duplicate. And going into here, making sure not to highlight the not, but to highlight the A slot. So see how that's different? If we highlight not, we lose the not. And so if we highlight the A, we can thumbstick to the right to duplicate into it. I was also using my undo tool here to undo and redo that, just so you guys can know what was happening there. But there we go. So now we've set it so that go up is switching to not go up, which means if it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. It's just constantly flipping back and forth every 1 second. So now we need to figure out, where are we going to? Like, what is the rotation? Okay, so I just remembered that we didn't set this one up as beautifully as we did this one. So I'm actually going to go duplicate this guy from up here because it's got all of its groupings done. And then we're going to remove the animation from it. So turning animation to never, turning play on start off. And then this will be animated, so I'm going to leave it on animated. But then we need to zoom in. And it's scripted animation, so it's a little different. And then because we have these 2 wings here, we're going to do the same thing we did before by deleting one of them and only using one to get us started. And then we will do the other one later on once we duplicate it. So clicking never, turning play on start off. There we go. And we want to attach the script wings. Perfect. And then what we need to know, I think what we're going to want to do here is reference this guy. This is our kind of like thorax. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology. If you know butterfly terminology better than me, please tell me. Or if that's right, please tell me. I look forward to finding out in the comments. But we've got this guy, and we're going to use this as a reference. It would be mighty beneficial if we had these lined up a little bit better. So we see X minus is in the right direction, but we see Z plus is wrong. So this has Y plus going down, or is it up? This one does Y plus going up. And so it would be really nice if this one was oriented the same as this. There's actually a way we can do that. It's a little bit difficult, but we're going to try it anyway. And so what we're going to do is slide this guy over here, slide this. So we're zoomed into a group, which is not the best way to do this. So we could actually ungroup this, might be the easiest way to do it. So let's ungroup the group. And so now that we've ungrouped it, we've still got the 2 pieces here, but they're not grouped together yet. And so actually, even better idea. Yes, much better idea. So what we can do then is select the wing, then select our, is it thorax? And then thumbstick to the left to group it together. And now the outside group has taken the orientation of the wing, which is fantastic. So it's actually showing Y minus pointing up, which I would believe is true. We also need to know that the inverse will be true on the other one. It'll be the opposite up. And so what we're going to do on our script is go to the variables tab, creating a new variable, which is going to reference the outside group. So this will be called the entire bee fly object. Okay, so we got the entire butterfly object, clicking confirm. And then back over here, we're going to need to zoom in and reference this. So we zoom in here, open the properties panel of this guy, then we can zoom out. This is the entire butterfly that we want to reference. So we'll drag that into, it looks like we've got an error, so it's not working yet because we have the else here. So what we're going to do just for now is put in some filler objects here. So rotate to over time, and we're going to just put one of these into each of those just so it's not freaking out on us. We can then now go down here and drag our butterfly group into the empty pill slot. You can actually go both ways. So you can drag from this empty pill to this pill here. And there we have it. So now that has been linked in. So what we can then do is take this value and add to it a certain rotation and use that to determine where we want to rotate to. And you'll see why that's important in just a minute. Now, I'm no rotation genius by any stretch, so we're going to guess and check. We're going to start by deleting these 2 rotations. Actually, we'll leave this one here for now. In fact, I'll just, no, we'll delete this out of here. But what we need to do first and foremost is go to our operators tab, grab the plus symbol, which we're going to put into this top one. When we're done, we'll duplicate this into the bottom one. But for the bottom one, for now, we're just going to grab the rotation of object. And the rotation of that object reference we just created, which is the entire butterfly object. Now what this means is it's going to rotate back to its original rotation on the else. And up here, we need to rotate to that original rotation plus something. And I think this is the correct orientation. We might actually have to flip these because orientation in the plus statement for rotations does matter. So we're going to go then to our values tab and grab just a simple rotation input. We know we want to rotate by 45 degrees along, I'm not sure, the Z axis, I think. So hopefully I'm right. We're just going to throw a 45 in the Z, so X, Y, and then Z. Hitting play, we'll see if that rotates correctly. Oh, look at that. It's perfect. I wasn't expecting that to work the first time. Wow. Okay. So then what we can do, and we'll just let this keep playing, is we're going to take this plus symbol. So grabbing from the plus while it's highlighted, we can then thumbstick to the right to duplicate it in here. You'll notice it gets stuck in that upward 45-degree angle. We can then hit the minus 45 right here. And now it should start flapping a full flap. And that is wonderful. Very, very nice. So with that set up, we can then duplicate and do the other wing. So we're going to go ahead and hit stop. And we're going to then zoom into our group just as we did before. Then we're going to go ahead and duplicate and rotate at the same time 180 degrees. And with this, there's one problem, is that it's going to do the same thing we saw last time where it always rotates to the inverse. And so what we need to do is open up the properties panel and make sure one of these has go up as false and one has go up as true. So they start inverted and then they should stay synced. So now we'll go ahead and zoom out and we'll go ahead and click play and see if that works. Okay, well that's definitely not doing what we want it to do. So we'll go ahead and hit stop. What we can see is going wrong here is it's just flipping between these two rotations, but we need it to rotate between these two rotations. So that Boolean really didn't help us. So there's an easy mathematical way to fix this, I think, and that's by going to our variables tab and creating a new variable, which will be a rotation, and then this is going to be called I am opposite, and so we'll just call that I am op and click confirm, and then if it is opposite, we add like 180 degrees to this axis, I think. And so we'll check this again, but then what we can do is add another rotation to this. So we'll go ahead and duplicate this by thumbsticking to the right. We can then delete this, delete that, then drag this into the A slot. So now we have an additional plus symbol that we can use. Deleting this top rotation, we can then grab the I am opposite, putting it into here, and then we're going to duplicate this down into here, but drag up the minus 45. And then delete this one. Now the benefit here is that we only have to type in 180 on the other, but what we're going to try by hitting play first is to see if we got 180 correct. And we did. Okay, perfect. So now we're on the opposite side. So then what we want to do is zoom in and delete the 180 from just one of the butterfly wings. So if we open up this butterfly wing, for instance, and come on over here, we can then just remove the 180 and type a 0, clicking enter. Now that one will not be affected by the 180-degree rotation while the other one will. We can then zoom out. And now when we hit play, we should have our perfect flapping wing butterfly. Oh, goodness gracious. I think minus 45 might be... Oh, wait. Actually, that looks better for some reason. It was just weird the first time. That's not bad. We could always do different rotations. So if we wanted to do like not minus 45, we could try something else. Perhaps like a minus 25, I think would work. Let's go ahead and hit play and see if that does what we expect it to do. So that appears that we got them backwards because it's going down as much as it would, but it's not going up as much. So we're going to hit the undo and change this to be a positive 25 up there, which should now affect the bottom, maybe. I think, yeah, so there's a little bit of weirdness happening. Oh, yeah, you see what that is? So because they're inverted, adjusting those values doesn't work exactly the way we would expect. So we'd have to also adjust that 180-degree number a little bit. But you know what? We're going to leave it at the perfect 45 because that worked pretty decently. I'm pretty happy with that. And you can just play around with these numbers. Like I said, I'm no expert here, so just kind of like finagling these numbers. If you minus 25 or minus 20 here, maybe you have to minus 20 there or add 20. So definitely try some of those things out if that's what you're going to want to go and do. Now that we have the wings flapping, it's just time to add the keyframe motion, which is going to allow us to move this butterfly around. And it's actually relatively easy. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. So we're going to go ahead and hit stop. And I feel like we've had some recent tutorials that are going to like dive into this kind of in a similar manner. I'm trying to think what that one was, but we just did one that was really good. So we're grabbing a script And this is going to be our butterfly itself. And so I'm going to go and put this underneath the wings, since the wings are kind of like a part of the butterfly. We'll then call this bee fly. Now, when world is started, we also want to create a loop. Yeah, we're going to just go and do that one more time from scratch. So we click when event is received. We grab send event with delay. We grab send event to object up here. Then we'll drop down select loop, which you'll know is still there because we used it in a different script. So now we got send loop to self, and now we're looping every 1 second. Very nice. And the next thing we want to do is go to our variables tab and create a new number called I, which is an iterative value. You'll see how we use that in just a moment. And then we're going to go create another vector list. So making sure to click the list button. So this is a vector list, which we'll call position. And then we're going to create another rotation list, which we'll call rotation. We actually did something very similar to this with a random position script recently. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check that out, which allows, there was somebody using this script to do a duck that moves to a random position using a similar function. So definitely check out that random position if you're interested in that. But for us, we're going to do set positions and set rotations. Now, the thing about keyframes is you often want to change the amount of time that it takes. So we're going to create another number variable, but it'll be a list called time. Now, our time list is going to tell us how long does it take for each of these keyframes. It's important to note that each of these must have the exact same number of items in it. So right now there's 0 items. You can manually add items by going to this drop down and clicking add new item. You can add new item this way and then add new item this way. Now, if you saw a random object position, you'll remember that we send these from reference objects to get the reference position and reference rotation. You could also send a time value to get that. So rather than sending it with a delay of always being like instantly, you could actually send it with varying delays of like 0.5 seconds, then 1 second, then 1.5 seconds. Then each of the keyframes would be received at a different time, meaning that these position values would be placed in order. So that's just another way you could think about it. For today's demo, I'm just going to show you how you can manually add these values. Go to our butterfly and place it in the first position. So we're going to say this is position 1. We'll then open up the properties panel, bringing that over to our script menu. And we can go to the attributes tab and just type in this position and rotation. So we'll go ahead and click this add new item. We can then do the rotation, which we see is 0, 0, 180. Don't worry if there's like a little negative there. Those don't really matter. It's just 0, 0, 180, which we'll go ahead and click add new item. Perfection. And then how long do we want this to take? So we're going to go ahead and say this one will take 2 seconds. Click enter. And then we just need to add a bunch more positions. So I'm going to add 4 positions total, and then we'll be right back. For this last stretch, I'm actually just going to keep the butterfly moving straight so that you can see that when it moves straight, it should actually move straight, because we're making a circle, but we're only doing it with 4 keyframes, which isn't ideal. So ideally, you're going to want to have a ton of these positions and rotations to really determine that. And so now we've got 180, 180. We're going to go quickly add. All right, there we have it. There's all 4 items. I do think these times are a little fast, so I'm going to go change them to 5. With this setup, it's time to learn how we can use these values in our script. Now over here in our loop, we're going to do the same thing we did before by going to the values tab, grabbing a set2, but rather than setting a Boolean value, we're actually setting this I number value we created first. And so I is always +1. So we go to the operators tab, grab the plus symbol, putting it into the right side, grabbing I, thumb sticking to the right to duplicate it, and then we'll go to the values tab and grab a number input, which will be 1. We can then type that in here. And now the only problem is I goes upwards indefinitely, which is problematic. So what we can then do is duplicate this, delete the plus symbol over here. We're then going to go to the operators tab and grab the modulus symbol. And so what modulus does is it stays within a bound. So it's going to go upwards, and then when it reaches the maximum, it's going to loop back to 0. And so we're going to grab I here with +1, putting it into the A slot. So this is the value. And then the right side determines what's that max value we can go to. So we can delete this top. Now the max value, if we go down on our operators tab to list, you'll find length of list at the very top. We can drop that into the B. And we know these lists always have the same length of each because they're all the same length. So we just grab the length of any of those. So we're going to use time. And the length of time is 4 items. So 4 items in length means that when this gets to 4, it'll become 0. And what's nice about this is 0, 1, 2, and 3 are the items in the list. So if you drop down, you'll see that 0, 1, 2, and 3 do correlate to each of those items. So that's perfect. We can then use that to be our rotation. So we go to the motion tab. We're going to grab the move to over time. We're going to grab the rotate to over time, and then we're going to grab the operators tab, get item from list, which we can then drag into these slots. So I'm going to go ahead and thumbstick to the right here, thumbstick to the right here, and into the time slot there. Now for our time, we'll do that one first. So we're just going to drag time into the list, thumbsticking to the right, grab the I value for the iterator, meaning which position we're at. We'll then thumbstick to the right there. And now we've got time set up. For our position and our rotation, we'll go to our variables tab, grabbing that position, putting it onto the right side, grabbing the rotation, putting it into the right side, and then grabbing our I and thumbsticking to the right there and there. We do need to make sure all of our times are in sync, so we're going to duplicate that into here and into there. And like that, we now have our butterfly set up to do some motion. And okay, it's not already moving. I was like, are you already moving? So let's see. The first item on the list, so we should actually move this set I to the end so that it moves to the first position first, and then it will go after that. So let's go ahead and hit play. So it should go to that first position, which is going to be a little bit wonky because we forgot to attach the script. That is a bit of a problem. I always forget to do that. That's such an easy thing to forget. But basically, got to open up this, and with this open, we can then drop down and add the butterfly script. And now when we hit play, you're going to see it's going to do this weird 180-degree turn. And there it is. It figured itself out, but now it's flying. You can see it's got some motion, and it's not perfect. If you had a lot more keyframes, this would look a lot better. You can also finesse your keyframes, but this is what I want to show you. This straightaway looks really good. And so just adding more keyframes is really going to improve the flight pattern. So if you really wanted to do like a rotation, you might want to add a few more keyframes around the corners. And there you go. So you could do whatever you wanted with this, but now you could have full control over it. So rather than hand animated. But the other thing that's cool here is you could hand animate this together. And so if you did hand animate it, you could get this kind of same natural look without having this, if you knew that it wasn't going to be like super dramatic. But either way, I encourage you to play around with this. I will point out one really quick flaw here is that this is trying to rotate to the position of that thorax, and because it's constantly moving, it's about a 1 second behind. So if you look from above, it's not perfect. It's not terrible from down below, but it's not perfect. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. So this hand animated one definitely going to look the best in terms of like having some organic motion, but the scripted math here and all that, I think is really important to know when you're working on trying to build something with some keyframes as well. So there you have it. If you guys have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. I love reading your guys' questions. This was actually, like I said, a question from the comments. So really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to join us on Discord, where we have a super awesome active community. We will see you in Horizon. Can't wait to see you there. Bye.